the mastermind, the creative behind this new film, My Father's Shadow, which is a semi-autobiographical tale set over the course of a single day in the Nigerian capital of Lagos during the
Lego.
1993 Nigerian election crisis. So, my first question for you, sir, what inspired you to tell this particular story? And, it's described as semi-autobiographical. So, two-part question. What inspires you to tell this story, and how much of it is drawn from your own life?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much. I can't take all the credit. I would say the mastermind behind this is my collaborator, my brother, who's the lead writer. I'm the co-writer and director of the film. Uh, the film equally, Lagos used to be the capital. It's changed from the capital in 1991 to a place called Abuja, but it used to be and still is considered the commercial hub in Nigeria. That's where I grew up. That's where I spent most of my, adolescence into early teenage years. Um, and what happened in 1993 on the backdrop of this election result is based on real memory. I was the same age as the two characters, as the younger character, and my brother was the same age as the older child character in this film during on June 12, 1993. And it was a period in our history where we were going from a series of bloody, brutal, and very oppressive military dictatorships to this shiny golden orb called democracy. And we'd seen our parents sort of lose a lot of this sort of this idea of resistance, and protests had been sort of waned out of them by these like authoritarian regimes. And this idea of moving to democracy was something that was really exciting for them because they really were optimistic about the country fulfilling its like potential and becoming this African giant. And just as quickly as their enthusiasm for this thing came, it was again taken from them by the military powers that be at that point in time. So when it comes to the first part of the question or the second part of the question in terms of how much of it is truly autobiographical, actually pretty much all of it is autobiographical, apart from using a certain level of creative license to leverage a relationship that we never had. So I lost my father when I was 20 months old. I'm named after him. I'm the youngest of three sons, and I have a sister who's the first. So me and my brother, who grew up together, we used this as an opportunity to interrogate a relationship we never had. We have one memory of our father, which was playing on a bed with him, which we put in the opening sequence of the film. And we never really knew if we fabricated that, or if someone told us, or our elder siblings maybe told us, or we made it up. But what mattered is that that feeling belonged to us. And that's something we try to put in the film. Like, no matter what anybody watching this film thinks, is like these boys had that day with their father. And for us, it was an opportunity to sort of interrogate, our relationship with masculinity, our relationships with this idea of an absent father. Obviously, our father died, but in the film, it's slightly different context. And the performance of masculinity, and sort of holding it accountable for our mother and the women in our lives and stuff like that. So equally, the fact that Nigeria was under military dictatorships meant a lot of history, our contemporary political history, was not taught in schools. So a lot of the generation who fled during the Civil War in the late 60s, and those who fled over the numerous years of military dictatorship, or even the next generation, the millennials and Gen Zers don't have a lot of access to their own history. So it also serves as a historic, I guess, creative historic document for those. But even it serves that for Nigerians, but equally serves the same for people who are not from Nigeria, who are interested and curious in this kind of behemoth that is Nigerian, and equally trying to move away from stereotypical portrayals of what that means, because we all know that stereotypes come with a sort of slighted double meaning, especially when you're a black person. So we really wanted to try and shift the needle on that. I think stereotypes on the one level is the sort of micro of the film. It's a father and son relationship. It's sort of getting away from this idea of absent black fathers, this kind of demonization of the black dad, or to show that black people are not a monolith. We have like completely divergent views on our experiences, but equally we wanted to present the notion of what our experience life, what it means to be Nigerian or African in the context of our fathers having to go away from work or being sent far away from work. So our parents are, we're not living with our caregivers and they're having to provide. So it's breaking stereotypes in that way. I think history more in terms of what it means to be Nigerian. I think everybody has an idea when you mention Nigeria. There's this idea of corruption. It's a dangerous place, that it's an unsafe place. And I grew up there, and even though we grew up under the sort of authoritarianness, I think it was incredibly beautiful community to grow in. I think when you think of any place, the biggest resources is human resource, and being amongst Nigerians and living with Nigerians is probably the biggest gift that my parents ever gave to me. And I'm very proud and I sort of romanticize this country that I grew up in. Obviously, I've been away from home for a long period of time, but I think the ills that fall Nigeria in terms of stereotype and people's perceptions are, maybe like this idea of leadership, or lack of leadership. And I think within our film, whether it's the micro with the boys and their father being the leader, we also wanted to have a conversation about nationhood and leadership and the country coming into dictatorship and being a young democratic country. And that's the tension that we sort of face in the film. So yeah, I think all those reasons, history, stereotype, and yeah, are reasons why we decided to make this film.
Now, the film takes place over a single day, right? So, what drew you to that compressed timeline as a storytelling device?
Great question. I think the idea of a single day means the days is finite. It means like as an audience member, you already know that like the clock's ticking, because as soon as the film starts to get darker and the night falls, you're getting close to the end. Equally, I think as children, we remember days as being endless and long when you're spending with your parents, and there's just so many side quests you can get involved in. I think also it helped to bed a lot of attention that we were needing, because on that day there's this election results, so on the periphery you're getting all this information of sort of what's happening. And I think sort of, yeah, it also just allows us to be a little bit malleable with like, what's sort of occurring over the course of a day. But I think, yeah, it gave us an opportunity to add a lot of tension, to otherwise what feels like a very sort of like familial, soft story, basically.
So, what do you hope audiences, especially those unfamiliar with this period in Nigerian history, take away from this film?
Well, I hope they get to become a lot more familiar with Nigeria's history. I hope they're able to project their experiences into it. I mean, I think the specificity of this film makes it even more of a sort of global story, because I think there's something in there for everyone. If you're interested in familial relationships, there's a conversation about masculinity, how it's performed, how you hold it accountable. I think there's this idea of loss and grieving as Black people, how we grieve together and how we try and hold space for together. I think for the historian, there's learning about what Nigerian culture is like, and equally for Nigerians to learn about their culture. And I think, yeah, I think there's just many areas for people to learn, but ultimately, I hope that people learn to hold space for their elders, for their family, for their parents, because you know, I think historically as Black people, maybe we don't tend to communicate about our feelings and what we've been through. And I think it's important to try and hold space for those who are a little less equipped to be able to make those conversations and continue to sort of learn more about ourselves.
What was it like directing the young actors, and how did you build that father-son dynamic on screen?
Sure. I mean, it was with its challenges directing two young actors who've never acted before. It was their first foray into acting, just as well as this is my first feature film. But I think we encased them around acting coaches to make sure that they were able to learn their craft, able to learn technique, able to leverage that all around this idea of play and enjoying playing and learning what they were doing. Yeah, I think that was like the main crux of what we were trying to do, is encourage them to play, encourage them to be themselves. I think the dynamic of father son comes from you giving children this idea of who are very resilient and very receptive, giving them a certain level of responsibility, allowing them to rise to the challenge, not policing their behavior, but encouraging it where you see fit as to be able to use that in what you're trying to do, and allowing them to show up as themselves and bring themselves into what we're doing. You know, I'm not a very sort of like dictatorial type of filmmaker. I love to work with people. I love for them to put themselves into it, to give us ideas and just feel free. And I think when you work with kids, I think if you give them a certain level of trust, they always tend to always like pleasantly surprise you.
Very good. Well, they did a wonderful job, those two young men, those two
Thank
young
you so
actors. The
much.
cast was just superb. So,
Thank
and
you.
that relationship, the father-son relationship on screen feels really authentic, right? It doesn't feel
Amazing.
forced. It doesn't feel like they're acting. You really feel like you're watching the day unfold with a father and his son. So,
Completely, completely. I
yeah,
also, just lastly to say, I have to also thank Shokwadiri Sualid, who played the father, because I think he was a father to them off and on screen and really a mentor to them. And I think they really shone under his tutelage as well. He's an incredible, incredible actor.
very good. Well, sir, that is my time. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. This film is a wonderful project. So,
Thank you.
much continued success to you. And maybe we can speak again later on down the line when you put out your next film. So thank you,
I'd
sir.
love that. I'd love that. Thank you so much, Noy.